Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for a special workshop with the Board of County Commissioners. Today is October 26th. If I could please everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you for all the staff and my colleagues and everyone being here today in attendance for this very important meeting, and I'm looking forward to having this great discussion. I'll turn it over to County Manager Roger DeGiorgio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those of you who are standing, there's seating in the blue room, which is just at the other end of the hall, for about 35 people, and there are monitors in there so you can hear what's going on if you care to be seated instead of having to stand. Good afternoon, Commissioners and everyone. This presentation and conversation is at your request, and what you specifically asked of us is to put together a workshop that would be educational in nature, to help people understand more about this debris and the cleanup, how it happens, the agencies that are involved, and all of those kinds of things, sequencing of events and all of that. What you're going to see today is that this debris profile is dramatically different than what we've experienced in the past for any storm that we've ever had, at least certainly in my memory, and for the memory of most of the people in the room, I suspect. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood between 9 and 10 million cubic yards of debris countywide. And I think in Irma it was something shy of 2 million, I believe. It is partly vegetative, as is clear when you drive down the road, but there's construction demolition debris unlike anything we have ever seen before in this county, all due to the storm surge. I don't think we've ever experienced somewhere between a 10 and 15 foot storm surge, depending on where you were in Lee County at the time. And so between vegetative, the construction demolition debris, and then a category called registered properties, and those are boats, vehicles, appliances, and the like, a lot of which are in the water. And there are federal rules associated with removing all of those, but as we get into this presentation, we'll talk a bit more about that, who does it and how it happens, how it gets paid for. There are 7 separate entities that are collecting debris. Lee County, the cities, the state, special districts, and federal government. And so we'll show you a matrix in a little bit that who's responsible for what portions of the debris collection and removal. So I think I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Glenn Salyer, Assistant County Manager, who is taking the lead for us in coordinating this effort. Glenn?
Thank you, Roger. Commissioners, guests, I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to step you through the agenda in some detail. As Roger mentioned, this is really an opportunity for the public at large to understand this process, and so we'll ask the commissioners to bear with us for those parts that you already know. Not everybody that's watching does, of course, but I'm going to use the opportunity to go through the agenda to introduce some of our speakers today as well. So we will start with Doug Whitehead, who is our Solid Waste Director, and Doug will walk us through some of the really strong progress that's been made to date thus far in collecting the debris. He will be followed by our Solid Waste Operations Manager, Amanda Condamina, at the end here, and she's going to talk about the collection and disposal process so that people have a better understanding of the life cycle of debris from right-of-way collection all the way to final disposal. That then will be followed by a conversation about all of those different jurisdictions involved in this process that Roger just talked about. And as part of that, we'll ask Stephanie Stankiewicz, who is FDEM's General Counsel, to talk to us about some of the really important missions that the state is running. They've been such an incredible partner to us, and they really are leaning forward in a way that we've not seen in previous storms, and so that we thank her for being here to talk to us about that. John Hoyle will be next. John, raise your hand. He is president of Thompson Consulting Services, unbelievably great debris monitoring firm. He knows everything about FEMA reimbursement. He'll talk to us about how they monitor debris, but also talk a lot about CPDR and PPDR. So that's commercial property debris removal, private property debris removal, and he'll talk specifically about what is required for a government entity to go onto someone's property and make that collection. So that differs from what we're doing now in terms of right-of-way collection. So he'll step us through that in some detail. After that, Christine Brady, Assistant County Manager, will talk to us about the communication plan, and we've got a PR firm here, Z-Axis, that is helping us with that effort, and so they might be involved too, but she'll tell us about that. And then we'll wrap this up by going back to Doug to talk to us about some of the tools we've created so that our citizens can monitor this process in real time. So we have a lot of transparency around how this happens. And then finally, of course, your board discussion at your pleasure. So if there are any questions about the agenda, I'll answer them now.
Any
and if not...
Any questions for Glenn at this time before Doug starts?
Very good.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead with Lee County Solid Waste. I'll be addressing the progress so far, which is pretty impressive considering other entities that we've had in the past. Very straightforward. I think everyone can see the dates. So what went on between first push complete and landfall is, of course, we were doing search and rescue all through that time as a county with a lot of help. And then first pass began the immediate day after the first push was complete. On the 22nd, last Saturday, we collected 1 million cubic yards to date, which is just a lot for us. Does not include, of course, the rest of the county. And our projection is we project to reach the IRMA total by day 32, which is the 5th of November. First pass, as you can read, about the distance from here to Cincinnati, Ohio, is what we've conducted so far.
Hey, Doug?
Sure.
Would you speak up just a little bit or closer to the mic?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Doug, we just want to mention too that 32 days for Irma's total, it took 4.5 months to collect that total for Hurricane Irma.
And this further goes into that, is that the 1 million cubic yards and total cubic yards collected compared to Irma, which is our experience, is that we've collected essentially 5 times as much material. As of today, we're as of day 21, Irma was at about 216,000 cubic yards. Right now, we're over 1.2 million cubic yards as of today. So we continue to collect material at a very fast rate. Here's an example of some of the debris that's collected. Now, right picture is not for shock effect of having a boat on top. Is what that demonstrates is that all the material in that house will become debris because the water was that high, and that's what as you know, we're facing in many of the areas around the county. The upper left-hand corner shows a street that's been cleared in a mobile home community. This is a mobile home community that actually we do have access to. Other things that's typical debris you'd see in other neighborhoods, which that's also an example of what, frankly, we'd like not to see, which is a mixture of horticulture and demolition material. And then the other photo shows, the last photo on the bottom shows just the variety of material and the damage that we've experienced throughout the county. So it's a great deal of material. Again, estimates vary, but 2.5 million cubic yards plus, certainly. Collection. This is an example of our use of, as with our contractor, of the double trucks, which have 2 units. They are self-loading. The self-loading, it's also self-unloading, as you'll see. It allows us to quickly pick up material along the side of the road as we move through the areas that are affected. The center photo is important because that shows a monitor. Every one of our trucks has a monitor that goes along with it and ensures that we are properly recording for accuracy and reimbursement the amount of material that we're collecting. The material is then taken to a staging site known as a debris management site. You can see the rows as the self-loaders go down and unload the truck quickly. This is why the self-loaders are just a very, very good system to use, because it's quick load and quick unload, and they can get back on the street very quickly. What happens at this site is, if it's yard waste, generally it is ground up, the material is ground up to make mulch, and the material is moved in trucks that are more appropriate for moving mulch, usually walking floor trailers of about 110 cubic yards. For the construction and demolition material, that is, as you see upper left, that material is crushed, compacted, and again is put in trucks, which are better for the longer distance that we will take the material to the final disposal site. This is some photographs of our sand operation. This sand that you're seeing here is sand that's collected from Estero Boulevard on the county right-of-way. This is located right over the bridge in Fort Myers Beach, and it shows just the process where the screener is separating debris at lower center out from the sand, and the upper right shows the material after being screened. The process continues to work. It is a 24/7 operation that's going on with the sand.
Hey, Doug, real quick.
Sure.
Before we then move to the next slide, I'm going to ask just a few questions as we go along today then that people in the public have been asking me, and you and I have probably talked about them already, but I'm still going to ask them because I want the public to be able to hear the answers to the questions that they've been asking me too. And so I appreciate the pictures and kind of walking us through the debris pickup, transport, and then staging and everything like that. I see many people frustrated that, in fact, one gentleman driving around on social media this weekend, he's a contractor. I've got heavy equipment, I've got trucks, I could just pick all this up off of my street and get it out of all my neighbors' yards if they'd let me just go drop it off. Can somebody do something like that?
People can do what they want. The question is, who's going to contract for them? Who is the liability for that? We can't pay them for it because of our contract that we have for collection. In addition, if someone does that, we can't record it for reimbursement either. So they can do it, but I think it's a high risk to the neighborhood, and we see a lot of unlicensed contractors, not this gentleman, but unlicensed contractors trying to take advantage of people on the street, which is very, very dangerous.
So if they loaded it all up and they brought it to one of our staging sites, we would not allow them to dump it?
No, sir, we cannot.
We can't because we wouldn't get reimbursed for it, right?
Yes, sir, and they are operated by our contractor. As a side note, which we're not talking about, is that right now Buckingham is taking in approximately 40% higher amounts of individual counts. That's for everyone. That's our solid waste location in the county. And these are private contractors that are moving material, and we're accepting the material and charging for them, and then we're recycling the material and then moving out waste from it.
And I might be jumping the gun on this because I know you brought a consultant here who's an expert in the monitoring and the FEMA reimbursements, but I don't think people really believe us when we say FEMA won't reimburse us for that. But it's true, right? I mean, there have been other disasters throughout the United States where debris removal has not been reimbursed, or certain portions of it, correct?
That's correct.
You want to hit your microphone. That bottom button, just touch it. There you go.
Yes, sir. To answer your question directly, there are instances that are well documented throughout the country where there's been significant deobligations. The other elements that you have to consider is these sites all operate with FDEP permits. So they're permitted facilities where a contractor is accepting liability for the way that they're operating on that site. And I think finally, if these sites are very busy. The contractor that's hauling debris on behalf of the county is moving as much equipment through these sites as they possibly can, and introducing outside vendors or participants is dangerous, and it would also create, I think, a pretty significant bottleneck in the operation.
Okay. Thanks, and I'm going to let you move on with your presentation, but I just wanted to, be able to ask those questions because it's a tough answer to give people when they don't understand. I've got the equipment and I've got a truck and I want to just take it to the site and get it out of my yard so I don't have to see it anymore. And I don't think, they really understand how much money we could be at risk if FEMA is not able to reimburse us for it and they don't cover this reimbursement. And so it's an answer that stinks to give. I don't like giving that answer. I wish there was a better way. It's like that classic example of I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help, except now you got to follow all these rules and regulations and strings attached. So,
Commissioners, one piece of that we, I don't want to skip over is that for the first 90 days, or 60 days, 90. Reimbursement, yeah. So for the first 60 days following the landfall of the storm, the government is paying 100% of these expenses. And we're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And for people to be able to just pick up in their neighborhood and drop them off at these sites, undocumented, Lee County then becomes liable for that to pay that bill, and that goes right to the general fund and property taxes.
right.
And if I could, Doug, back on Commissioner Hammond's original question. So if you have somebody, the neighbor that has a truck and they want to pick up the stuff, they could voluntarily do it, but we're not going to reimburse them. They're going to have to pay to dispose of that somewhere else. So if they want to pick it up and dispose of it, I think what we're afraid has happened before is people collecting a bunch of material and just stored it on their property. I've been approached to the same question. And also, hey, I have 5 acres, I have 10 acres. I can store all that stuff on my property. And then it becomes a land use situation where we don't want to have a year, 2, 3 years from now, we have to deal with throughout the county debris sites that people walk away from that we have to clean up later or creates fires. I think that's one of the problems too. So if they voluntarily want to go get their own trash or their neighbor's trash debris and take it, they can take it and pay to have it disposed of, but they can't pay for it. So they're allowed to do that. Can't tell them not to do it, right?
Yes, Commissioner, I want to emphasize that we have 4 citizen drop-off sites that Amanda will speak to later around the county for people to take their...
We have 4 citizen drop-off sites.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember the location? Can you say the locations real quick, the 4 sites?
Sir, Shell Factory Triangle, Mosquito Control is another one, Brooks Park, and then, we'll get the other one. I'm sorry, just off the top of my head.
I think it's also important to mention the fact that the maximum you can bring is 5 cubic yards. So someone with a large trailer goes there and they think they can dump there, and they can't. And I think I've run into that with some of my friends, obviously being in the construction business, where they got bigger trailers and they've gone here thinking they can dump and they can't. So of course then everybody's irritated and mad, but we're trying to get that message out that you can go and dump there at those places, but it's 5 cubic yards is all you can take.
Right. Mr. Roy?
If you can go back 2 slides, I think it is. Staging? Okay, that's good. I'm sorry, staging. So how many staging sites do we have?
At this time, we have 6 sites that we're using extensively, and we have a good throughput on those sites. We have one on Sanibel that we're sharing with City Sanibel. We have one on Pine Island. We have Pagefield, Waxahachie. We have Lee Health. We have a Lee Health site. We're using the Civic Center. And she will cover this, but I'm sure I'm missing one along the way. But we're having good throughput. I've been out there to watch throughput, and trucks are unloading, getting processed very quickly. We have a lot of excavators and grinders working pretty hard, and then we're moving the material out.
And isn't that evolving, even that situation evolving, your sites or correspondence come back and forth about another potential area of potentially 5 acres, maybe 10 acres on Rockville Road?
So that's a private site, which I believe, and I'm not sure, I believe they're trying to take 5 acres and include that in their permit. I think that's Southwest, and they have a permit to process construction demolition material for recycling, and they're trying to permit themselves 5 acres, but we have to provide approval for that also. Yes, sir.
So this is basically just a site we have, but there may be some potential sites that are private that would be approved.
Yes, sir. We've opened sites, including right now, Lover's Key has been recently opened. That's just for the town of Fort Myers Beach at this time, but that's been opened, and we recently opened the mutual site with Sanibel on Sanibel for Sanibel and Captiva.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. This is a screenshot of our debris management system that's produced by Thompson, and it just emphasizes, it shows those blue squares are where we have monitors which are following trucks, plus there's a blue square usually at a DMS where we have an inspector there on a tower inspecting loads to make sure they're correct. The green circles could represent anything from an individual pile to upwards of 150 piles, depending upon the size and how far you zoom in on the portal system. You see even in the grayed out area, which is Fort Myers Beach, those circles are the material that we've collected along Estero Boulevard. Any questions? Okay. I'll be followed by Amanda Condamina, who will address all of the disposal system that we have. Thank you, Amanda.
Good afternoon, everyone. Commissioner, I think this will answer the question you had about the debris sites. Before the storm made landfall, Lee County had over 37 pre-positioned, pre-authorized FDP-approved debris management sites that covered the full county. So once we started doing the debris assessment needs and looking at our debris sites, these are the locations that we chose to activate. They are in the areas that had the most debris to be collected, and they have the shortest windshield time, which increases the efficiency and productivity of the debris collections. Having these pre-positioned sites allowed us a swift mobilization to begin debris cleanup with only a week's time after the storm event occurred. So what you can see, the blue dots are our debris management sites that we have currently activated. The yellow marks, which you see down on Fort Myers Beach and down into Bonita Springs, those are our sand staging lots where we are doing the sand screening and renourishment. The sites that are in the triangles, those are the citizen drop sites that we were looking at around, or that we have mobilized around the county to collect the residential debris for residents to bring to us if they don't want to wait for the trucks to come pick it up. So the way that the debris collections occur for these sites to be utilized is once the residents have the debris to the public right away, from there the collection equipment goes in, picks it up, and takes it to one of these debris staging sites. At the sites, as you saw in the pictures, the material is segregated into either vegetative debris, construction debris. From there, the material is broken down and processed. The vegetation is mulched and sent out. The construction debris is then compacted. Right now we're using heavy equipment to break that down, and then we're sending that to final disposal as more material is coming in off the street. So this is a fluid map, and as, yes, sir?
I'm waiting for the chair now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate your stance staging sites. Obviously, my district starts over in Captiva, so I see Fort Myers Beach and I see Bonita. I've been in Captiva, I've been in Sanibel. Looks like the sand's been plowed over to the side. So are we going to activate some sites there?
Glenn, do you know if there's been discussion?
Commissioner, we're not. We've been in contact with CEPD. They do not want that sand for renourishment of those engineered beaches, so we have pushed it off the roads to the extent that it's been compromised by, say, fuel or other contaminants. It will have to be carried away and disposed of.
Same thing on West Gulf.
Yes. Now, my understanding is there are some private entities on Captiva that have uses for some of that sand, and so that would help us out so that we don't have to, haul it and dispose of it.
And how do you have that
On Sanibel?
Right, same issue as you go at West Gulf. Sand issues, so.
Well, I know the Sanibel city manager is here. He probably could speak that better than me.
I'm just wondering if we, as we're planning things, because obviously you talk about an awful lot
Mr. Wayne, can you turn your mic on? I'm sorry, can you turn your mic on? It's behind.
Yeah, and we do share staging sites, so, certainly we can be of assistance with
So
that.
we'll have more, obviously, if needed.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, I couldn't hear you, Mike.
Sorry, my bad. I was just trying to understand the number of staging sites, how you activate them, why you start doing it. You walk around as someone that represents a particular district. I see sand throughout my entire district, no matter where it is, whether it's Captiva, Sanibel, Boca Grande, Pine Island. I'm just looking at sand, and on the map, I see Bonita and I see Fort Myers Beach.
Right, and that was... Excuse me, that was a function of the quantities of sand and the quality of sand that we could actually rehabilitate. In some cases, it's simply not going to be good enough to put back onto the beaches.
Yep, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was Sanibel where else? I'm sorry.
Captiva.
Yeah, so where we are screening and rehabilitating the sand to re-nourish our engineered beaches is Fort Myers Beach and Bonita Springs.
Go ahead, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you. So at the time with the sites that we have activated now, this is based on our focus being just from the public right-of-way. So next time you see this map, there will likely be more sites, more debris management sites added into the mapping as we look forward into the commercial right-of-way based on guidance that came down this morning. But as of right now, these numbers are focused solely on the public right-of-way at this time.
Then, real quick, Mr. Chairman, may I, before we leave the slide then, one of the things I wanted to talk about while we were on that slide then is how many trucks are we running a day? And Doug can answer, whoever, yeah.
As of today, we have 108 trucks, which equates to 216 collectible units.
Okay.
That's just in unincorporated.
Last time I asked, we had 200 trucks. Did some leave the market?
It's the 200 collectible units.
Okay.
So each truck is two parts. It has two collectible units to it.
Okay. Are there more trucks available for hire throughout the United States?
There are more trucks that are available, and Crowder, when they come up and speak, they can talk to the trucking and their plans for the look ahead on bringing in or utilizing more assets.
Yeah, because what I would like to ask is, why wouldn't we open more staging sites and hire more trucks and get them down here then? Because I say that with respect to the amazing work that's being done. I mean, I fully want to acknowledge publicly the pace is much faster than it was with Irma. Everything is happening better than it did with Irma. Amen to that. And I fully applaud you for that. But it's like the consequence of doing a really good job is now we got to ask for more because we have 10 times as much as we had during Irma. So, if we've got pre-approved staging sites and there are maybe more subcontractors out there to hire, then let's get them here. Let's bring everybody from the United States of America who's got one of these trucks here, and let's get this picked up for our people.
Absolutely, and Crowder Golf will talk to this more. I can tell you in the short term, as a look ahead, we already have a plan in place to continue ramping up those assets as the work progresses and looking at the debris sites that are located in the areas we're going to be collecting in. So we already have a plan in place at minimum to ramp up to 120 trucks, 240 units, but that's fluid and it can continue to increase based on the need.
Commissioner, I would just say, so Reed Loper and Joe Hayes, they're going to speak in detail to how we allocate collection assets, how we prioritize collection areas, what the next phases look like. We can have them talk to that a little bit now, or we can do it a little bit later, if either way.
It's the pleasure of the chairman. I don't want to throw off the whole flow of the presentation. If you're going to get to that at some point, then that's fine with me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. So what you all are looking at here, this is a mapping of our initial damage assessments done just in the wake of the storm passing. These estimates were done by folks out in the field from multiple different agencies, not just from Lee County, putting in the damage that they had observed. You can see that there was over 5,000 structures that they deemed just completely destroyed. So Lee County, in conjunction with our contractor Crowder Golf, we use this mapping to start building our collection plan. What this shows you is, unlike any of the other storms that we've had, this is very much a C&D event. Irma, we all know, was primarily vegetative. It had some construction debris, but nothing to this magnitude. And with a C&D event, it makes the collection efforts much more complex. It requires multiple passes to come through. It requires additional disposal sites for that compacted C&D. It's not as streamlined as a primarily vegetative event. So we use this and we're able to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Could you explain in more detail, especially for the audience, the categories you have? One's destroyed, one's major for your total. How do you categorize, and what's categorized and destroyed?
The destroyed, and Glenn, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the ones that are destroyed are completely unlivable. You can't go in, they're a total loss.
Houses, commercial, gas stations, all the above?
This is from the field crew. We had USAR out there, we had FEMA representatives out there, county staff out there in their travels notating all of the destroyed buildings, all the damage.
And then majors?
The majors are the ones that had severe damage, but they are still able to be lived in. They're able to be occupied. They're able to be utilized, whether it be some roof damage. We know that with the water surge that came in, or the storm surge rather, that came in, we have all of that debris coming out that constitutes the major.
So just so I understand, I want to clarify your answer. So in major, it would be a single-family home, a mobile home, a condominium, a cooperative, a multifamily, a vacant, a commercial store, a supermarket. Would it be in all those categories? I mean, there's parcels. The way we identify the parcels in Lee County from the tax collector's office and from the appraisal office, you actually have parcels. There's over 550,000 parcels in Lee County. It's estimated by the tax appraiser's office that 129,000 parcels have been damaged.
I believe, and Glenn, you can correct me on this one, this is the structural.
So Mark,
Okay.
who oversees Department of Community Development, which really takes primary responsibility for the damage assessment for us, if you would, please, Mark.
Thank you, Glenn. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Amanda's correct. The assessments were done out in the field shortly after the storm. They are performed by USAR teams as well as some of our county employees in community development. They're initial assessments only. They're external looks at the structures. They're based on best estimate on what type of damage occurred. Most of it was flooding. Some of it was structural. None of this is really detailed. Now, we have Army Corps engineers out in the field, particularly on Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, excuse me, and Cape Coral, doing that more detailed assessment. So these numbers will change and they'll become more refined. But this was an initial assessment. To say that all of the major or destroyed are structural issues would not be correct or accurate. So this is their best guess from outside doing an external assessment of these dwellings.
So then is it fair to say from the initial damage assessment is how you came up with your millions of cubic yards?
As far as debris removal,
Right.
I would have to let them come back to the
I'm
mic.
just curious how one feeds the other, because the next slide is going to be how many cubic yards we have.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm sure construction debris is implicated here for some of the destroyed and major, certainly.
We have an answer to that from the Chronicle. Sir, go ahead.
Yes, the debris estimates that we arrived to that are for the total cubic yards, that's done through windshield assessments by our team.
Sorry, I couldn't.
That's done through windshield assessments from our assessment. Yes, sir. So basically driving around, looking at the debris, and then also we did a lot of aerial assessments as well.
So how do we, based on this evolution coming through, because I'm sitting here trying to understand what we have for a damage, what we have for cubic yards, and what you have to do to go back to Commissioner Hammond on how many trucks we need. Okay, so we don't have an event other than Michael to look at. We've been working really closely with Bay County. They had over 20 million cubic yards that they had to pick up. So I'm looking at our chart in Lee County saying we have 10 million. They had 180,000 people. We have 850. I then look at 550,000 parcels we have, breaking down all different categories from the tax assessor. And 129,000 has already been determined by the tax assessor, by the property appraiser, I should say, not tax assessor, as damaged. So I'm trying to correlate, how do we come up with a total and then feed it into cubic yards? To Commissioner Hammond's point, if we're to the next slide, if you'll indulge me for a second, I'd imagine one has to feed into the other to come up with that total.
Well, in a like they said, the debris that's generated off this storm was much more the construction and demolition debris, which does not account for as much volume as typical vegetative debris. Where Hurricane Michael, comparing that in Bay County, was a very, very, very heavy vegetative debris event.
I'm talking to the commissioners, there was over 8 to 9 million cubic yards of C&D. And based on the 380-page plan they put together by their team, it says that. So I'm just trying to make sure, because Commissioner Hammond made a great point. How many trucks are on the road? And I'm just trying to make sure if this is accurate, and again, you're doing a great job, and honestly, everybody here has done amazing. We've moved things, but this is such a fluid situation. I sat with the governor today down Fort Myers Beach. He said, we're now going to go into commercial properties. We're now going to go into personal properties. We're doing things at rapid speed. So I'm just trying to make sure whatever resources we have, we employ. And I'm also being cognizant of the fact that we have 60 days. I know that Bay County got a longer extension, but I'm also trying to understand this. So I just look at this number, and not that I question, I don't have the ability to. I'm just trying to look at quantitative information that's been derived from our other constitutional offices to try to say, okay, great, what does it look like? Because if there's going to be a reduction in some type of assessment on 129,000 units, it has to be from C&D. It's not vegetation. We're not going to give them credit on their assessment based on vegetation. And that's already come from the Constitution Office.
Well, we develop our debris estimates, based on our prior experience, also looking at core models as well. And we feel that this is an accurate debris estimate that we have arrived to.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
If I could, I think it's very important that we point out, obviously, a tremendous amount of this storm is flood. I drove around all up in the shores and more shores, and it's overwhelming how much that far up the river is damaged. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that people realize that we're a large county, and the damage is 20 miles inland, flooding. I live just a mile from the locks, and I had 9 foot of water in my yard. Luckily, my house was at 10 foot, but most aren't out there. There is a tremendous amount of flooding up that river. I drove through there 2 days ago, and the debris piles are unbelievable. You have been picking up, but about the time you pick up, people bring more out. They're taking everything out of their house, everything. Drywall, all their furniture, bedding, everything, even clothing. Some of the clothing is damaged. So it's a tremendous disaster up that river, and I think it goes, I wouldn't be happy with myself if I didn't make sure we understand how widespread the damage is, and I think that's some of the frustration you're seeing for some of the county commissioners is those people are hurting too, and we want that stuff picked up so they're living in those homes. And when we're saying 5,000 destroyed, there's thousands of homes of people living in that are gutted with no air. They have power, but they have no air. That was washed away. So I just want us to understand the magnitude of this storm.
Yeah. Commissioner Green, I think you made a good point. I think that's what we're all trying to emphasize. All of the work's been great, and it's nice. I was in one of those meetings with the Bay County commissioners from Michael, regarding that plan. But you compare Bay County to Lee County, I think their population is 130,000, 180,000. 2 or 3 cities, we have 6 cities. Our devastation is more commercial, more residential. It's a great comparison to see, but it's such a different scale. We have 850,000 people, and we have much more damage with the residential. And like Commissioner Greenwell said, it's all the contents of the houses. And you see it from Island Park up to Bonita Springs and down to Fort Myers Beach and Bonita. Commissioner Sindel, you've been down there with that, and all the islands. We're seeing this across the whole county. So I think that's what we want to emphasize. Is there more availability to get more trucks? And I know you guys are going to talk about that, so thank you again for being here.
But, I mean, I think what Commissioner Greenwell is saying is no one's here to say you haven't done a Herculean job. The problem is that this is growing at a pace that you can't even fathom. When you go around the community and you're active in the community, you look at Bayshore, you look at Oger, you look at Boca Grande, Captiva, Fort Myers Beach, Iona, Matlacha, North Fort Myers. I go through section by section, and again, you use your data. I'm an accountant by trade, so I'm trying to quantify how many units are going to be assessed from an assessed tax value point of view. And it's been determined that over 100, almost 130,000 of our 550. And if they're being assessed less, then obviously C&D obviously needs to be a higher number because they're not changing the assessment based on vegetation. And that's just right from our own constitutional office. And I believe I sent the spreadsheet to all the commissioners. Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, and listen, if I can say thank you, which is so meaningless, I'm saying thank you. Because honestly, I can't thank yous all enough, but we're dealing in unprecedented situations. The sooner we do this, the sooner we recover. We have our tour system back, we have a home industry back. And I know you all know this, but this is a situation of unprecedented times. So, you know, as we watch the governor build a bridge in 4 days or build a causeway in 3 weeks, we're just asking questions because our constituents are calling morning, noon, and night and wanting to know. I mean, I've had people already call me up, asking me where the cable TV is. Okay, that's just the constituent. And they're going to ask for, you know, this to that and anything in between. I'm just trying to make sure what we have, what assets we have, what we look at, because to Commissioner Greenwell's point, we're a snowbird community too. A lot of people are here for 6 months in a day. They're now starting to come down here. When you drive by homes and you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes stacked up and then 3 homes not, and then 3 homes after it, or you know those 3 homes weren't here yet. So that debris is just going to continue to multiply. So again, I'm trying to fathom in my own way to look at assessed values that drives this engine and look at the type of way we classify things. And it's amazing how we actually identify parcels. So I was just trying to come back to, and listen, with 130,000 units, parcels that are damaged, I'm just coming up with a B&D total that's a little bit different based on the assessments that are going to be changed, and major changes is what I'm told.
Go ahead. Did you have something?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. So your points are well taken, Commissioners. You know, that damage assessment map is only 2 of the 4 categories that we use. So there are thousands and thousands of structures not included on that map. Those are only the worst of the worst. And really it was just an avenue to talk exactly what you just talked about, Commissioner Ruane. This is a C&D event. It is going to be much different than prior storms in that this stuff will keep coming to the curb in waves over time. It will take multiple passes for us to clean all of this up. And you know, we do understand how different that is. I know the Crowder Golf team uses some fairly sophisticated models in their analysis, but it is primarily based on prior experience and flying it. They fly it every day. So can you tell us how you update your estimates as time goes on?
Well, you know, like you said, it does have to do with passes, especially with it being a C&D event, construction demolition event primarily. That does make it more of a citizen-driven event, meaning, you know, we rely on those citizens to bring that debris out to the right-of-way because that's the only location that we are allowed to operate in is the public right-of-way. So, you know, we try to allocate resources to keep up with that demand of the debris that's being brought out to the right-of-way. You know, and part of that whole process as a debris manager is managing the entire process from start to finish, not just looking at, you know, the haul-in function. Much of the haul-in function, which is the ask for more trucks on the right-of-way, a lot of that is dictated by the haul-out function as well. You know, we have, your staff has done an amazing job in having debris management sites already pre-established, pre-storm, much better than what we've seen in many places. But what we can't do is overwhelm those DMSs. So if we overwhelm the DMSs on the throughput that Doug talked about, you know, that could bring it to a halt. So it is something that we as professionals have to manage. So managing the haul out, and what dictates that haul out volume is also final disposal locations. And that's something that we don't have control of as a contractor, is the final disposal. So that is all part of the pieces that we try to manage as a whole for debris management.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you're managing that. The traffic alone, you could certainly indicate just how jammed up the roads are, but maybe we look at every particular way of transporting goods. And I just think that one of the things we might want to consider is if people, as we're relying on, are calling the tax appraiser's office to say they've had substantial damage or filed a flood claim, you might be looking at the street where we have quantitative information where the taxpayer has already called up to say their drugstore, their house, their condominium been substantially damaged and notified our tax assessor's office. So that might be a number that might influence your cubic yards dramatically.
Possibly.
And it's our own data that's here, and, you know, I get the fact you're doing what's on the street.
Absolutely.
When a dozen people aren't here and they come in dozens because they're up north and they haven't come down here yet.
Yep, fully understood.
That wave is going to happen. Just like today, the governor said we're going to go on private property. Or the Department of Emergency Management is going to go on private property. It's going to start doing things that are unprecedented. I think it's because the avalanche is coming. And all I'm indicating is I don't want to be the salt in the dune. I want to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll take it from this part of it. I don't think we need to dwell on this a lot since we've talked a lot about estimated cubic yards. This is what we have from all of the jurisdictions right now. These numbers are anywhere from a day to 2 days old, so I recognize that the volumes collected are even better than what you see here. So if there's any questions about that, we can try to address them. Otherwise, we'll keep moving.
If I may, and I do hate to belabor it, but I do see a lot of folks from the town of Fort Myers Beach here. I know a lot of them are going to be watching online. I see that, you know, all of unincorporated Lee County is estimated at $3.5 million, and we're at 1.15 million. Town of Fort Myers Beach estimated at $2.5 million, and we're at 200,000 there. What, I know the state is running that program, but what update can you at least provide to us as commissioners so that we can answer questions from people who are our constituents on Fort Myers Beach?
Yes, sir. Doug, can you go to the next slide too, please? And we'll ask Ms. Stakowitz to help us with this conversation as well. Do you want to start?
Absolutely. Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Stephanie Stakowitz. I'm the General Counsel for the Florida Division of Emergency Management. I'm here on behalf of Director Guthrie and the Governor of Florida. So the state received a mission request from the town through the county to take over the debris mission. And so we used the properly procured contract with Crowder Golf in order to do the debris hauling. The debris monitoring, fortunate enough, we had a an already procured state contract for monitoring with Thompson. And so we assumed both contracts and have taken over that mission.
And I think that in terms of a more detailed update, Commissioners, so obviously the county is responsible for Estero Boulevard. We've been picking that right of way up from the beginning. It, of course, took quite a while to get into the town because of the USAR operations that were ongoing there for quite some time. But Crowder Golf is collecting a lot of material. They have 70 loadable units on the island as of today, just doing the work. Do you guys want to speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. So a lot of, I spoke last night at a town hall meeting as well at Fort Myers Beach, and what I conveyed to them as well is actually not as reflected on the numbers there, but we're around 318,000 cubic yards collected from the island there. Some of that being from Estero Boulevard and then some being from the town roads as well. And we do have around 70 hauling units there on the island. We were also able to secure a secondary DMS site, which actually speeds up that process as well. We're currently at a production of around 25,000 cubic yards per day there in Fort Myers Beach, which would project to have about 80% of the debris by volume collected, somewhere in the ballpark of 60 days of what's out there. So we feel like we're, making really good progress there. The percentage of complete, as reflected on the numbers on the slide, that may look not as far as percent complete because we were slightly delayed in starting there in Fort Myers Beach due to the search and rescue efforts.
If I could, Commissioner Sandelli, this is the beaches, Commissioner Sandelli's district. He's been involved in down the meetings and everything down there. Commissioner Sandelli, do you want to add or give us any updates or anything? Grab your mic there. Your mic, turn your mic on.
I don't think, first of all, the work that's been done has been Herculean, and so my congratulations to all. We can speculate about a lot of different things, but the real questions and real peaceful answer to are the citizens, of Fort Myers Beach. Nobody knows it better than them, what they had before, what they have now, and what they have to look forward to. And so the town hall meetings have been interesting. They've been, sorry. So they have the ability to see what they had, what they are today, and where they want it to be. And it's going to change. What I've been impressed most with is that is the effort to organize this in a way that allowed us to get to the priorities. And I think one of the toughest things, was to basically work a schedule so we can get the debris removal, moved quickly and efficiently. That's not easy to do. We're on a barrier island, and then at one time we only had one bridge, and that was on the north side. And so again, the effort to open up the south side was incredible. So now we have bridges on both sides. Now we have a main water line that goes from north to south, which was completed in record time. And so every day, it's a step in the right direction. I would like to think I'm pretty good at figuring things out. The fact of the matter is we have all the expertise that we need here. I think our job is to, one, I said this at a town hall meeting, I was told one time, listen well. Listen well to the people that are here that are living it every day. Secondly, have some empathy for what they're going through. And then three, communicate in the right way. And I think that's the approach that, from my perspective, works.
Well, I think they're in good hands with your leadership, being the vice chairman, and your experience in the business world. I think what you've done over the last 30 years in private sector with rebuilding Tampa, never thought we'd be dealing with this today like we are, but I think with your expertise in that, coming as we talk about rebuilding and what Lee County overall and with the beach and everything that's happened beneath it, everything they're well deserved. So
I've had numerous calls from people, not only here, but also I got off one just before I came in here from a developer I've known for a long time, and they bought a substantial piece of property over on the East Coast and want to come in next week and talk. Now, whether they see something they like or whether we entertain, that's for a different point before we get there.
thank you, because I've talked to the council members and the mayor. When I talk to them, you've been there every day, so thank you for continuing your communication. I think that's something we all need to do throughout the county. Is I know Commissioner Hammond is speaking to his cities, and Commissioner Wayne is too. We have to keep those line of communications going, so thank you for doing that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before we leave Fort Myers Beach real quick, one question I want to ask is, I think the feedback I've gotten, I've talked to a lot of residents on Fort Myers Beach, and some of them have said the restriction, it stinks, but we understand it, and it seems to be helping you work faster, so we understand it. But my question is, what criteria, I realize that was a four-party decision. It was with the sheriff's office, the fire department, the county, and the city to make that decision about the restricted access schedule. What criteria are we using to determine when that will end? What needs to be satisfied? Yeah, or whoever.
So, Commissioner, we've always maintained that in the end, that is a town decision. It has been incredibly helpful in getting all of the restoration crews into work, not just Crowder Gulf. It was originally set up with the notion in mind that it probably would extend throughout the 100% reimbursable period, so that if that does get extended to, say, 90 days, then, there'd be some thought that it might continue that long. But ultimately, they've got to make that decision as to what's working for themselves. I know Sanibel is starting the same schedule, I think, as of Monday, correct? So I hope that helps.
And so it's a decision that the town will make when the restriction ends, and so is it up to them to develop that criteria? Sounds like the criteria really weighs heavily on getting through the 100% reimbursement so that you can collect as much as you can while it's going to be reimbursed 100%.
That was the idea, absolutely.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may, also landed Fort Myers.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. Also about Fort Myers Beach, and I guess this is more of a construction question, but I have a lot of people I know in the construction business, they're asking this question. If you have a building that is half gone, 2/3 gone, 1/3 gone, what are the contractors to do? Are they to tear that building down and put it on the road, or they need to put it in their own dumpsters and haul it to the dump? I think that's a question I'm getting tons of, because what was on the ground, they're already putting on the road. What they're asking is the stuff that still needs to come down, what do they do with it?
So Commissioner, I think John Hoyle would be great to help us with that. He sees this all over the country.
Okay, great.
And Commissioners, John Hoyle, Thompson Consulting Services. As it relates to the question about this reconstruction debris, the primary and fundamental consideration is whether those demolition contractors have disposal we're trying to prevent a duplication of benefit. So as those contractors are demolishing homes and properties, if the contract that they use to provide that demolition includes disposal of the material, they should haul and dispose of that material legally. And that means at a landfill that's permitted to accept that waste. The second part of that is whether the insurance proceeds that were provided, there's a duplication of benefit consideration as it relates to subrogation of insurance benefits. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to the PPDR and the demolition, but I think it's an excellent question, and I think the messaging to the public is to ensure that they're aware that if the contract they have for that demolition says that the contractor should dispose of the material, they should ensure that that contractor hauls it off and disposes of it, because ultimately they could become liable for that. So,
Thank you.
Doug, go ahead.
Doug, will you please go to the next slide? Commissioners, this does show a number of jurisdictions and agencies involved in all of the many types of debris that we have. The cities and the county are all picking up right-of-way debris right now, so that's your vegetation, your C&D, white goods or appliances, the sand that we've already talked about. Stephanie's going to talk in just a minute about the state's registered property mission, as well as the PPDR and CPDR that the governor talked about today. And this is where you're going beyond the right-of-way onto private property. So she'll talk about that in a minute. The other types of waterway debris that go beyond registered property also include C&D and vegetative. And there's going to be a lot of entities picking that material up. So Lee County will do it for all of the water courses that we traditionally maintain. We have a disaster contractor in place, Aftermath, who does that work for us. The cities all have the same. The Water Management District is helping us with some of the water bodies in Lee County, and then the state has graciously agreed to step up and sort of take care of everything else, really. And so that will be a big help. Polluted waterways, we have a state and federal, including the Coast Guard, handling that, and then, of course, hazardous material. We're all involved in that as well. If there's not any questions about that, we'll ask Stephanie to talk more about those other missions that I think you're interested in. Will you go to the next slide, please?
So the state just put out an RFQ, which is a competitive solicitation. It was an emergency one for titled property, PPDR, which is private debris removal, and CPDR, which is commercial debris removal, and we did this at the request of the county to take over everything else. Additionally, we did assume FDEP's contracts and FWC's contracts for both derelict vessels and wet debris, so that's debris in the waterways. And so we are here as partners. We're here to do whatever we can and to move as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can. We do anticipate awarding a contract for our RFQs to multiple vendors. We're going to do it based on kind of the director and I talked today, splitting it into sections so we can move more efficiently and quicker, and that way we can get as much resources down into this area as possible. So pending any questions, I can answer anything from a legal perspective. If we get more into the PPDR, CPDR, my knowledge base is very limited, but I will defer to Thompson or Crowder.
Do we have any timeline on when you would actually start seeing, after you said it went out to bid, when you were able to start moving some of the vessels, for example, from the waters?
So for the vessels for the water, and I don't want to speak on behalf of FWC, so they're going to do everything as it pertains to the administrative process. So the tagging the vessels, reaching out to the property owners. You know, we do want to make sure that those titled property owners get their rights, their due process rights. And so they have 45 days in total, 21 days for their due process to obtain their titled property. And then after that, that's when the division's going to take over through our MOA with FWC to actually haul and dispose of that property.
So what about the vessels that's underwater, for example? How are they going to be able to find a whole number if it's underwater, then contact the owner, or are they just going to try to remove it as it is underwater?
So my understanding is that they'll use sonar to actually locate it, and then I think there's some other additional, they have to, I think they call it pump out the contaminants of the vessel, and then they would remove it as is. You know, obviously we would still want to contact those owners just to make them aware, but unfortunately those vessels would be disposed of, but we will still contact them.
Obviously, we have the danger of the vessels being underwater for boaters, and we have obviously the link of the contaminants all in the water and sewage into the waterways. So that's why I was asking about the timeline as far as the contamination of our waterways.
Anything where there's an active leak, DEP will be very much readily involved in working those active leaks. So that would go out of the purview of FDEM, but we would work in partnership to assist them with that. So it would be anything where there wasn't an active leak that DEM would be taking over.
And the vessels that got washed onshore, there's some are way inland, a few miles or a few hundred yards. Would they be covering those too, or just ones in the waterways?
So that's where our request for quote or our competitive solicitation comes in, and those are upland vessels, so that's part of the titled property that we're going to be removing.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions, Commissioner Hammond?
Thanks. So sorry to jump into the two that you said you got to learn more about, like we all do. But I am getting questions from, first, mobile home parks where they might be zoned commercial, so the debris hasn't really been able to be picked up by us. Does this allow that to happen now? I mean, what do you do if you have a mobile home park where there was heavy damage and they brought all the debris out to the curb for the mobile home park?
Right, so I think that would be considered under commercial depending on how the actual mobile homes are owned. With that being said, I think that does fall under FDEM, and so for the stuff that they can take to the right of way, obviously we would want that picked up, but for anything that is too heavy to move themselves, we would go on with correct permissions, rights of entries and other waivers.
Do they have to sign up at that website then that y'all put out in order for that to take place, or will it just automatically happen?
So we're going to be doing some outreach, so it's going to be a joint effort. So we would like for as many citizens as possible to sign up for that commercial property. We'll be doing outreach as well.
Very good. And then there are businesses that were in the storm surge zones too. So if a business is in a situation where they had to go in and cut the drywall all out and put all their furniture and everything like that out at the curb, is that also included in the commercial debris removal? Is that something that this covers?
So I think it depends on where it's located. So if it is taken to the right of way, that would be where Crowder Golf would step in and take all of that from the right of way, or right alongside of it. Anything that isn't being obtained within, or anything that isn't able to get brought to the right of way, I think that's where we would step in.
Okay, so again, those kinds of, great example. We were there with the governor at the press conference at Doc Ford's the other day, and I remember talking to the owner of Doc Ford's. There was a big garbage pile in his parking lot there, not necessarily at the right of way. That's a property owner who could reach out to this program and potentially take advantage of this?
Potentially. So it depends on what that debris consists of. So I think construction and demolition is debris that we would take over. It's all dependent on, what's federally reimbursed, what is eligible under this program. But where the county or the town or the municipality would step in, we're taking on that responsibility now. So anything that the town or the city or the county would be responsible for, we're now going to come in and do.
Thanks very much for that.
And I think John can help. That's a good segue, John.
Yeah, that worked out conveniently. I think it's a nice segue. I was asked to first explain a little bit about the debris monitoring process, and then maybe focus a little bit more on the PPDR and the CPDR programs and how those are typically undertaken. From a standpoint of Thompson Consulting Services, our role and objective is to document the removal of this debris in a manner that's acceptable to the federal and state government for reimbursement purposes. So we're the accountants out in the field. We barcode the assets that Crowder Golf brings into town. The nice part about our mission and our job is we're able to hire from the locally unemployed communities. So we've got about 500 temporarily displaced personnel out working in the field that have probably lost their job because of this storm, and they've got a good paying job to help them recover. We train them and provide them with the technology to kind of scan that equipment. Mr. Whitehead had mentioned that we've got a monitor with each one of those crews. They're ensuring that the debris is eligible, that it's being quantified properly, and this is all from the right-of-way. Our ultimate objective is to ensure that we've got an audit-ready file. All of this work will be audited by several agencies over the next decade, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the audit file that's prepared will withstand those audits. With that, I'm going to kind of move into the PPDR and the CPDR programs. I would say first and foremost, these programs have been around for the better part of 20 years, but they are seen on a very limited basis. They're reserved for the most catastrophic disasters. We haven't seen many of these over the last 20 years. I would say that the programs are typically undertaken 3 to 6 months post-storm. That's when you see the first activity occurring. In the case of the state of Florida, the Division of Emergency Management and the governor's office has been very forward-leaning. They've been proactive about identifying bottlenecks and where these programs have kind of fallen flat in the past, and they announced those waivers today. My own assessment is that those waivers will improve these programs significantly for the residents of Lee County. And by improving those, I mean that they'll be able to have access to these programs much more quickly. They're going to see improvements in their lives much more quickly. Even with DEM's involvement, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what this means as far as a resident that wants to see debris removed from their private property. If that resident says, hey, my resources and abilities to clean my property are overwhelmed, DEM is going to offer them an avenue to sign up. From that, they have to enter into a right of entry that says, hey, I'm authorizing the government and its agents to enter onto my property and clear this debris. So that's the first step in the process. They're going to have to enter into a hold harmless that says that they're not ultimately going to hold you responsible for a cracked driveway because of the removal of that property. The subrogation of insurance, this is always tricky. Some of these homeowners may have received insurance proceeds. The insurance proceeds may be less than what is needed to demolish their home or their property. In those cases, what that says is that they would ultimately turn those funds over to the agent that's performing the service, in this case, FDEM. There is still a legal authority element to this, and I think that's some of the stuff that we're working through. What law or ordinance or code we're acting through to enter onto private property, whether that's nuisance abatement, whether that's a structural collapse ordinance, what it may be. But ultimately, this is a program that's, I think, well-defined in the requirements. The Division of Emergency Management has been quite successful in granting some waivers that decreases the time for these back-and-forth reviews of surveys. So I think, again, that's going to be a significant benefit to the residents of the county. And I think we're just now getting underway. I think the announcement was this morning, but the government has been leaning forward with these programs. So that was kind of what I wanted to discuss, and I'm happy to take any questions when appropriate.
Any questions this time? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Joe Hayes. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Crowder Golf, assigned to Lee County. I'd like to begin by saying we fully recognize the great impact that this storm has had on the entire county as a whole. These debris priorities, collection phases for first pass, were developed in conjunction with Lee County and our own internal damage assessments via helicopter flyover and windshield surveys. The yellow indicates the initial phase of operation. This is the highest impact priority zones with the largest volumes of construction debris at the right-of-way. These zones have the greatest threat to public safety due to that debris, and they have the highest potential to impact the safe ingress and egress for the residents and first responders and other disaster recovery personnel. This is where we started our operations. As we move into the next phase of operations that is indicated with the pink shading, these are high impact zones as well. And as zones in phase 1 are completed, first pass complete, we will then move into those zones shaded in pink. Purple designates a more moderate impact zone, and as the second phase of operations completes for first pass, we'll be moving into those purple zones. From there, the blue zones are the fourth phase of the first pass of collection efforts, and those are moderate impact as well. And once we complete the third phase of operations, we will be moving into those zones. Once we have completed all 4 phases of the first pass of collections, we will begin to assess again and begin a second pass throughout the county. And as it's been indicated before, this will take a number of passes to complete this debris removal project.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have the ability to provide, I think a lot of this deals with communication and expectations. Do you have the ability to provide us with some expectation of when you'll hit, zone or phase 2, phase 3, phase 4?
So 80% of the debris on the ground by volume currently will be collected within the next 30 days.
Is that all phases? All 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I know we've got this GIS dashboard where people can look and see where you're working. Does that give people a time frame of when you'll be in their neighborhood working on their neighborhood? Is there any way we can provide, it doesn't have to be a specific appointment, but some sort of range of what they can expect?
I believe this color-coded map is our best option for indicating the timeline. The operations are extremely fluid. They are reliant on a number of operational factors. So in terms of being able to give a definitive timeline, it's going to be very difficult.
So if you're in the purple zone, zone 3, though, are you going to wait weeks or are you going to wait more? I mean, so we're already several weeks into this now.
3 weeks.
Are we getting to the purple zone right now, or are we still in the yellow zone?
We are in the yellow zones. We have filtered trucks into the pink zones. And as we complete more first pass throughout those initial zones, we'll be able to address both the blue and the purple zones on a fairly efficient timeline.
Okay. At your current pace, are you thinking that's going to take days or weeks?
It'll take weeks.
Weeks, okay.
But like I said, it will be 80% of the debris on the ground by volume will be removed in the next 30 days.
Any other questions? No? Doug, you have another, next slide, okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Christine Brady, Assistant County Manager. Your community engagement team, as well as solid waste, have been working on a communication strategy with our public resources and marketing vendors, Z-Access, Pushing the Envelope, and SACS, to create this communication strategy with the focus of 2 goals. The first is to create ongoing messaging for our citizens that will provide regular updates on this debris removal process. Some of the questions that we want to address is where were we? What have we collected? What's the frequency of collections? And then reminders of some of the things that our citizens can do to help assist with the process. As the second goal is focusing on a public education campaign, being able to provide information to the citizens to help them better understand what the process is and to be able to address frequently asked questions and concerns. We'll be using a multi-platform approach to create content that will address our traditional media outlets as well as our digital media outlets. Some of this content will include videos, public outreach, social media, as I mentioned, newsletters, as well as things like bus wraps, and billboard signage. So we're working through all of those things right now. Our website will host all of this information. We're looking to take the citizen tools that have already been developed and formulate them into a story map. If you'll remember, we've used this technology before, previously for flooding, our water story, to name a few of those tools that we have out there. So the team is currently working on those things right now. And if you move to the next slide, please. Right here, you'll see a snapshot of the Lee County homepage, which on the left-hand side where it says debris removal, if you are to click on that link, that will take you to our Hurricane Ian debris page and some of the content that has already been created. This look will continue to evolve as we build that content out. And as previously mentioned and on some of the previous slides, there's already a number of citizens tools that have already been created. And I'm going to turn that back over to Doug to take you through some of those tool sets.
Thank you. Commissioners, as you move to our website, as you can see, we have links such as to debris procedures, frequently asked questions, as Chris talked about, also how to separate storm debris, which remains a constant messaging which we need to use. Obviously, hurricane cleanup separation again, and also is that trash, debris, and recycling collection update. We do get questions about regular trash collection. For instance, I think like on 17 October, we returned to picking up recycling, which is well received. But we have to continue to communicate those things. And then there's the Hurricane Ian debris removal dashboard, which again, you can zoom in to see the street levels. This is available to the public. And this goes right to the phases that we discussed earlier, the ability for the citizen to get in and see, for instance, where has first pass been complete, for instance, areas 2-3 and 2-4, and then where we continue to focus the majority of our work. And the yellow areas, which again are the coastal areas, are the big focus. And far up along the river, as previously mentioned. We continue to focus assets there. And then when will first pass be complete? Which again, right now, first pass is complete in 6 areas of the 104. We think that there's individual streets which are preventing us from declaring first pass complete because we have wires down, cables down, things like that. So as we focus on those individual areas, even use DOT team that we have to work on us, we'll be able to get in there and say that they are complete. That does not mean, as has been mentioned numerous times, there will not be material on the streets. Material continues to come out. We're very aware of that. There's been several focus areas where we've taken essentially daily photographs to document, hey, this is the initial collection, this is what we saw after initial collection, and we'll continue to focus in high priority areas and provide communication again there's various agencies, of course, which are concerned about and continue to monitor our collections on the street.
Any questions for Doug on this? Doug, I have a question. As far as the dashboard and the website, can we tell how many people are actually observing it, clicking on it, or going into it? I mean, I know we're spreading the information as fast as we can. We're hoping the media is helping us get the information out to the public, but can we tell?
And we can communicate that in messaging if you want every day. We do get enough.
How much traffic we're getting on it?
Yes,
sir. Some of the communities are getting it, and Amanda and all the staff's been great getting information out to the communities. It's just trying to get, there's so many people in so many different areas. And understand also, if you're in the city compared to being in the county, it's a different system too, so.
That's correct. And we can provide that information.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman. So, this is what I had referenced earlier. I think a lot of residents can look at this and say, okay, well, I'm in phase 2. If we could put something in the legend next to phase 2 that said just a range of when we anticipated, phase 2 is 15 to 20 days out, and phase 3 is 20 to 30 days out, or whatever the range ends up being, because I do think that people are going to look and say, well, gosh, I'm in phase 4. I don't have much to haul. there's a self-haul site just down the street, maybe I'll just go ahead and take my small bit to the self-haul site down the street because it doesn't look like it's going to be here for a little while. I think helping people understand the expectations is something that that would help them with their frustration anyways. That's just an idea. I mean, because it's a question that all of us are fielding every day is when will it be my street, you know? And then, you know, as we get into the Board of County Commissioners discussion part of this, which is what this last slide is, you know, based on everything I've heard today, again, I want to reiterate, great job by everybody. Thank you to Governor DeSantis and the state for the unprecedented speed at which he's moving. And we want to try and match that speed here locally with our efforts too. Based on everything I've heard, I mean, the thing I'd like to see us do is open up a few more of these pre-approved debris sites and get more loadable units in market and start getting through this so that we can get through it as fast as we possibly can.
Chairman, if I may. To touch on more of that, Commissioner, I think I've heard the governor say multiple times that it's important that we don't focus on one thing. We can do several things at one time. And I think that's important for us as county commissioners and county staff to realize that not only do we need to clean this up, we need to build it back. So I think it's very important that everyone realize that as a staff that we need to move forward as fast as we can to help people start the process of being able to build back. I think that's going to go a long way in the recovery effort that we're going to need to have. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. I think the governor says that a lot, and I commend him for that. I think it's awesome that we can do more than one thing at a time. Important. Thank you.
Commissioner Wayne? I'll go
to Ray first.
Commissioner Sandelli, go ahead.
I think a certain way. That's the way I was trained and so on and so forth. There's no question that the team and the resources here are incredible. I'm glad to see that the thing that we closed on in part was communications, because that's the thing that I get most. Are we communicating enough? And it seems like it's never too much. And then the question is, when you're communicating, what are you communicating for? And so the first thing is I think our community sees things happening, and I think they're pleased. It's never fast enough. Everybody wants it done and wants it like it was, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Second thing is I go back to our individuals, our constituents, our neighbors, and that's an assessment. One, internally, what resources do they have, okay, and what can they plan on going forward? Some are going to leave because they don't have certain resources. The second thing is how family and friends fit into that. So that's that equation or assessment internally and externally. And then the third thing is, and I think this is where important, based on what I have, what I want to do, some people are going to leave, unfortunately. Some people are going to stay, okay? But what are my alternatives if I want to stay? I've been to 3 or 4 of the mobile home parks. People want to stay. But what can I do? Can I rebuild this? And, as we all have, we walked in sometimes and the floors, don't go too far in because the floor is going to give way, But what are my alternatives? If I'm going to have, and I think the thing that's facing most of them is, what are my options, especially with the 50-50 rule and building to the new code? Some people will make a decision under certain circumstances, others are going to on the others. But I think the communication part has to be, we have all this data, and that's great, because everything should be based on the fundamentals. But I think it's the progression. How do we lead and communicate with our neighbors so that it makes sense? You can overcomplicate this. It is complicated. The more that we can break it down and simplify the process, I think helps them put their head in the pillow at night if they have a pillow anymore and stuff like this and go forward. So I like the fact that all of this gets synthesized down to communication. And I think what our neighbors want to hear and how we respond to that will be key in how we go forward.
I think the county manager, our next Board of County Commission meeting, community development staff is going to give us an update where they are with that. They're looking at obviously the 50% rule and some other, how the increase of community development and permitting. We've hired new people. There's been people brought up here from other counties. Collier County has the staff here helping us. So the whole rebuild process, Roger's going to give us an update on Tuesday on all that.
Yes, sir.
So, Commissioner White?
Commissioner Sandelli, I couldn't agree with you more. And to Commissioner Greenwell's point, I think we're at a point now where we're not only going to continue to pick up debris, but we need to start to recover. Listen, I'm blessed to actually had spent as much time as I have with the Bay County Commissioners and certainly their chairman. And I did put on the agenda for Tuesday long-term recovery plan. I mean, we need to emulate their document, and they not only put together a document by an outside firm, because they actually had a logistics firm, and then they had a group, and there's actually 7 cities, believe it or not, in Bay County. There were 9 people on the board. Our board probably would be bigger, but Tuesday's discussion, I think we need to, A, talk about debris, continue to do that, B, the 50% rule and how it all ties in, but C, we need to come up with a long-term recovery plan, and I know I did put that as a commission item, but you know, I think it's really important, and what they did was bifurcate the responsibility. So no action did that group do other than come together with many different parts that are necessary, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's housing, whether it's natural resources, whether it's funding sources, policy oversight, whether it's health and services, economic recovery, planning and building. There's so many pieces, and we all have expertise. But this is a long-term recovery. I'm also blown away, and I sent to each commissioner, the amount of funding that the state did, and I can't thank the governor and what they did. Bay County got over $2 billion in funding in 3 years. $2 billion. So there's opportunities here. We need to recover, and we need to give people, to Commissioner Sally, a plan and hope and communicate to them. I know we can rebuild. I know we have the resources, and I look through their plan. I will certainly do the best I can. My team, certainly on the outside, is going to come down with about a 15-page plan to try to give you all. This is something we need to do, and this needs to be on the same parallel path. We need to look at 50-50, how that's going to impact debris, and we need to recover. And the good news is the way this was structured is there was one elected official that actually is in this, but to come back to the body on every issue. And there's subcommittees underneath there, there's subsections, there's so many opportunities. There was over 750 meetings they had, over 250 branches, from nonprofits all the way through. And there's all subcommittees going on, but there's just a coordination effort. The plan is amazing, and obviously have something at least from the starting point of view. Because, you know, when we're having conversations where the governor's saying we're going to have a deferral on ad valorem taxes, we're at 98 revenue streams. So how's that all going to be impacted? How does this place, how does that place? And the reason why I reached out to the tax assessor's office or the property appraiser's office is just to try to think about the impact. We, as commissioners, approved a $500 million line of credit on top of the plentiful reserves when you look at our general as well as our enterprise funds. We have a lot of cash, and it still frightens me to make sure we start to do this. So Tuesday, I'm certainly going to bring this commission item. I'll have an outline. I made copies of the book for each one of you. It's something we really need to do, and we need to start to do it tomorrow. I mean, as soon as humanly possible. You know, I certainly have been around the financial world for quite some time, and certainly I'll try to do as much as I can to give guidance and start the foundation on this. You know, but it's something we need to do. And they also had a logistics firm, because you all need to do what you're doing, but we still need to try to coordinate every aspect. And when you start to look at the opportunities and the agencies that are available that have already been identified, they're enormous. And we're having FDOT build bridges. We're having, I mean, just funding sources. Santa Barbara, yeah, we'll take care of it. Yeah, Panan, we'll take care of it. I mean, we're moving at lightning speed, but the opportunity with infrastructure dollars out there at the federal government, we need to capitalize on this, because we need to give these people hope. We need to give them tomorrow. And we're going to rebuild. It's going to be better. It's going to be stronger. We're going to be united. So it's just something that it's going to be a good conversation. I'm certainly going to put it on everyone's radar. I just think it's essential that we do this as one community.
Any other comments? Commissioner Valley, were you trying to get my attention? No? All right. You good? Okay.
No, I'm just running out of note taking.
Okay. Just don't take the notes. Okay. You else have any questions?
I do. Touching on that, did the Bay County actually appoint someone in charge of recovery? Is that one of the things that they did?
Robert Carroll was the chairman, and again, he just put together the group with the 7 cities, school board, a couple other different agencies, and they just chaired a meeting. to obviously go through everything they did from soup to nuts. But yes, and what they did do, which was differently, was the person that does that, and they're still in their 4th year, they basically elect to be out of the rotation, never to be chairman, because it's their responsibility to see the plan through, as long as they're in office. So that's what they did. So 2 separate bifurcations of responsibilities. You know, I certainly am always been in, you know, just enamored about numbers and trying to understand, and, you know, it's what I've done my entire life. And this is an opportunity to step up and make sure we build back as our community, make sure we get every nickel that we're entitled to. And I thank the governor from the bottom of my heart. He's done so much for us. It is mind-boggling. But there's an opportunity here. And with that opportunity, these people behind us are going to know we're doing everything we can to make sure we rebuild this back. Because what we can ascertain, and Bay County certainly did what they did, we'll pay back 9 times quicker than Bay County ever could, because of the demographics of our, you know, citizens here and the average median income and things of that nature. There's so many different factors. And I know I'm throwing a lot of charts at you guys, but I'm just trying to get information as best I can to understand the impacts as we have this.
Okay. I'm going to get right back on the agenda here. Commissioner Sindelli, did you have?
I'll probably get in trouble for doing this, but we talked about the folks in back of us here. Do a shout out to this guy right here, you know, Dan Allers and stuff like this. I mean, we talk every day. So if you want a place to start, you want to start. He lost his house, his cars, his business, and everything else. Dan can be, and that community can be, you want to start somewhere and find out what they need and how they want the process, part of the communication thing, part of the resources we bring to the table. There's a lot of people I could thank. We talk every day. And it's probably the most valuable conversation I have every day and stuff like that, among others. So probably get in trouble for doing that, but Dan, thank you, buddy.
No, that's what it's all about. So,
one last
yes.
thing. And Ray, I think that's so important, Commissioner, because that's exactly my point. The business owners of this community are people we need to realize that they need to build back too. There's a lot of business destroyed in Lee County. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of homes. So I think it's something that we all need to reach out and do the best job we can, because it's going to be very important in the future.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read this. Got this 5 minutes before the meeting, but I will look at it. Obviously, it sounds like it's already been talked about a little bit, but I will review it. But we got a lot of great opportunity now. We have the Horizon Council in place now. We have all these different groups in place too that can be part of that plan as we build. And so I'm looking forward to that. Our Economic Development Office for John Talmadge just does a great job. So look forward to talking about that in the future. Doug, you want to continue with the discussion of the debris? You have something else?
So that concludes our brief.
That was your last slide? Okay. Okay, just want to make sure. Glenn, did you have any closing remarks or anything?
No, sir, thank you. Well, I will just say, I think we heard loud and clear everyone's input, and we will be coming back to you with some options. So thank you for listening.
Back to you, Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, that was and for the presenters today. I think the conversation's been very helpful, not just for me, but for everyone in the room, and hopefully it will get reported well by the media. I think we understand the debris issue a little better now than we did, a few hours ago, and just don't want to overstate it, but this is a different kind of operation than we've ever seen before in Lee County. When you take a look at Fort Myers Beach, I've worked a lot of storms, and I've never used the word decimated before, but Fort Myers Beach was decimated. They need a lot of help, and yes, they're a municipality, but we have to be there for them as well. The Sanibel Island, Captiva, the barrier islands really took the brunt of this storm. Cape Coral, given its size and the number of homes and canals, presents its own special problems. Well, each of the jurisdictions, city and county, all have some unique issues that they're dealing with, but these conversations that we're having today and that we will have going forward are incredibly important. What I heard you say today was we start with debris, and if we collect 80% of the debris in the next 30 days, that has to be record-setting. I don't think I've ever heard of that happening anywhere in any storm that I'm aware of. communications is probably, the next most important thing that we do. If we're not adequately communicating with the community and with the governing boards and of all the other jurisdictions, that including the state and the federal government, we will not capture the kind of dollars that we need and might be available for this recovery effort. We talked about just a little bit, but I want to have some more conversation, not here, but we're back in the office, about whether or not it's practical to open additional debris sites and attempt to bring more resources. There are some self-limiting factors with all of that have to do with the amount of debris that's at the curb at any given time. As we make our third pass or maybe fourth pass, the debris will come a little bit more slowly, and so it becomes less efficient. And so we have to be able to communicate with the public what that really means. And so it's about controlling expectations to the degree that we can. The redevelopment effort will be, without question, the most important piece of this over the long term. Will we build back the way we were? Will we build back to a higher standard? Who can afford that? Who can't afford that? And then what? And then with all of that comes housing. We have a lot of displaced people. We got an email just a couple hours ago about emergency housing that's going to be made available more quickly than we had anticipated. So, we will, I expect, have these workshops with some regularity as we continue to move forward and as we formalize the process a little more. There's still some unanswered questions for a lot of people, I think, but it's at this point, it's a matter of now categorizing those questions and then being able to get answers as quickly as possible. So, Commissioners, thank you for the conversation today and all the presenters. I think you all did a great job. And for those of you who are listening today, if you have questions, we have a place on our website people can ask questions. Is that, Chris, do we have that set up?
Yeah, I'll double check the website
Okay.
for where exactly that is, but yes, it's.
Okay, so we'll make sure and publicize that well so people can ask us questions and we'll answer them just as quickly as we can. So, Commissioners, thank you, and that's all from me today.
I just want to say thank you for all the staff and crowd being here. One of the answers we got today was, Commissioner Hammond, you posed that question, was 80% within a month. So that's good to hear that 80% of all the phases will be cleaned up. So that's a good number to hear. So within 30 days, hopefully the county will look different. One thing, Roger, I know we talked a little bit earlier about getting more trucks and stuff. So I think there is a place on our website, our staff can provide information. If someone has a truck and they want to work for the contractor, there's an application process to go through, because we get asked that daily, how can we go to work too, other than being the 5 cubic yard or less trucks, but they want to go work with the vendors under that. So there's a process for them to go through, correct?
Doug?
Yes, sir, we have the website and the link, and you'll be able to send it to whoever inquires or tell them on the phone. Yes, sir.
Right. Well, that's what we've been directing people to, so if anybody's listening, there is a process to go through if you want to do that work. So.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm a little remiss in making one point, and you all talked about it earlier a little bit, and that is in all these years, I have never seen the state government or the federal government move as quickly and decisively as they have done for this storm. I've never seen a bridge rebuilt in 5 days or so, and have never seen the kind of dollars that have come to Lee County already in helping us recover from the storm. So just a huge thank you for everything that's happened with the state and the federal government, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from the board members or any other discussions before we adjourn? Okay.